Welcome to Discern with Jim Dennison. Today is Tuesday, October 19th. Today, Jim and I are going to be discussing the death of Colin Powell that happened yesterday morning. From Fox News, General Colin Powell, the influential former Secretary of State and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who played a pivotal policy role during the administration of then-President George W. Bush, died Monday at 84 from complications related to COVID-19, his family announced. Powell, the first Black Secretary of State, served in Bush's cabinet from 2001 to 2005, including during the tumultuous years following the September 11th terrorist attacks. The State Department described Powell, a Republican, as being one of the foremost supporters of taking swift military action against al-Qaeda. Powell demanded immediate cooperation from Afghanistan and Pakistan in the U.S. effort to hunt down those responsible for the attacks. So, Jim, this was breaking news yesterday, and I would just love to hear your initial thoughts when you heard.
My initial response immediately, as I was seeing the news along with everybody else, flashed back to a time back a number of years ago when I heard Colin Powell speak in person. I was at a leadership event. A variety of different speakers from around the country had been asked to come to this large event in Dallas, Texas, and he was one of the speakers there at the event. The humility that he modeled that day is something that really impressed me. That was his message. That was the topic that he was speaking on, was the importance of humility for CEOs and for leaders, the importance of servant leadership, the importance of serving the people that you lead, and being able to earn the right to lead that. But it wasn't just what he said. That's an important message, although you hear it from lots of places. It was the way he modeled it. When he was introduced by the staff person who worked with the group that was putting on the conference, he then thanked them by name for what they had said about him. He then thanked by name other people that worked with that group who had helped with logistics and arrangements. He was the only speaker all day that did that. After he made his address, he then took questions from the crowd. He asked each person before they asked a question what their name was, and he spoke with them, calling them by name as though he was having a personal conversation with them. When he was done, he made himself available afterwards for anyone that wanted to speak to him. Again, he was the only speaker all day that did any of that. And so here is this decorated 4-star general, America's top soldier, as you would say, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the first African-American to do that, to be Secretary of State, to be National Security Advisor, who was modeling the kind of humility that he was encouraging us to emulate. And that was years ago that I saw him do that, heard him do that. It's the first thing I thought about when I heard about his passing yesterday.
As I was doing some more reading myself, I came across this article that talked about his memoir, in which he was able to kind of reflect upon his life and his choices, and was able to just, admit to some mistakes he felt he had made in his life. And I don't know, I see a lot of humility in that, and being able to look back on your life and say, recognize and be aware that there's good moments and there's bad moments, and that we're not the summation of those things, and to be able to talk about them honestly and candidly. I found that very humble and humbling to read, because at the end of our lives, we're not going to just be known for all the good things or the bad things. And so I think humility is a wonderful legacy to leave behind, being a humble and servant leader.
In so many ways, that's really Jesus in John 13, isn't it? Washing the feet of his disciples, even though he knew they were going to deny him, they were going to betray him, nonetheless, modeling servanthood and then calling us to do the same. That's such a countercultural thing to do today. We live in a secular culture that measures us by what we do and by what people think of what we do. It's about popularity and performance and possessions. I remember the old commercial, "Never let them see you sweat." There's just this idea in our culture that we have to always put our best foot forward, and it's all about appearance, and it's always about impressing people all the time. That's such a tiresome way to live. If by contrast, we'll be honest about our mistakes as well as about our successes, we earn the right, I think, to show people the genuineness of our faith, the relevance of our faith, in a way that can make our faith relevant to them. My oldest son went through cancer 8 years ago. On the other side of that, he has been able to minister to people who are going through cancer in ways I never could, because he's been where they are and he's willing to share his story. He's willing to humble himself and talk about what it was like, talk about the tough places, talk about what he faced and what he feared, and he's a wounded healer in that sense. With the last church I pastored, we had a couple in our church that lost a little girl at 18 days of age. a horrible tragedy. We walked with them through that. I did the services, all the stuff with that. Well, they became wounded healers to families that lost young children. They were willing to humble themselves and admit the pain that they went through, the agony, the frustration, the challenges with their faith. And they became so much a blessing in that way that our staff learned when we knew of a family that was facing the loss of a child that we would call this couple. And 3 times out of 4, they would go be with them. They would walk with them through this. They were wounded healers. I bet you can think about people that were wounded healers in your life. Somebody that was humble enough to admit their faults, their failures, their challenges, and how that blessed you and encouraged you and helped you when you were in a tough place. So like Colin Powell, we can be wounded healers if we're willing to be humble like Jesus was humble.
In your article, you talked a lot about servant leadership and what you said of it's this kind of countercultural, against the grain practice and way of living that we find servanthood to be undesirable and unappealing, but Jesus modeled that for us. And in his kingdom, which is like often called an upside down kingdom, the servants are the ones who are like blessed by the presence of the Lord, the ones who like sit at his feet.
But that's what God blesses. God blesses a humble spirit, because the more humble we are before him, the more he can use us and guide us. He can't lead those that won't follow. He can't give what we won't receive. Somebody said God gives the best to those that leave the choice with him. So if you want to live a blessed life, live a humbled life. Live a life that's surrendered to the Lord, a life that can be used and led by God, that admits that we need what only God can do. And then God will not only bless us in that and use us in that, God will actually reward us in that, even in this life and in the life to come. In that John 13 story of Jesus washing the feet of his disciples, I once heard a pastor say, when we see the Lord one day, he will not ask to examine our title, he will ask about our towel. And it really is. Our serving towel that demonstrates the degree to which he is Lord of our lives and can be Lord of those lives that we influence and touch today. So the question is, are you available to the Lord? Are you humble before him? Have you today said, Lord, here am I, send me. Lord, here am I, use me. Lord, who would you have me serve? What feet would you have me wash? What need would you have me meet? What text would you have me send? What word of encouragement would you have me share? What call would you have me make? What need can I meet in your name? And remember this, Jesus said this in Matthew 25, what you've done to the least of these, you've done for me. The best way to serve Jesus is to serve someone he loves today.
Jim, that is a great question to leave us with that we can be thinking about throughout the next few days. That is all we have for you guys. We will see you right back here tomorrow on Discern.